We talk LA Kings season so far, who is and who isn't meeting expectations, potential trades, and more with Russell Morgan of Hockey Royalty on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and we are on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the last 30 years, also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the last 18 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. You can enjoy the NFL season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, the LA Kings have been so busy over the past week or so that we haven't had time for many special guests to join us, but that's not the case this week, and we are excited to bring back a friend of the show. If you've watched the show for any length of time, if you follow some of the Kings people that cover the team on social media, you should know Russell Morgan from Hockey Royalty. He is a podcaster. He is a content contributor that covers the LA Kings and does a great job. Follow him on X or Twitter at NHL Russell. Hey, Russell, how are you?
I'm doing good, Eddie. Thanks for having me on, sir.
Well, thanks for coming back. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. We haven't had you on since right before the start of the season, so very interested to get your thoughts on what we've seen so far from the LA Kings. Let's start with what has been good. The Kings' second place in the Pacific Division, a pretty competitive Pacific Division without Drew Doughty all season. What have you been impressed by? What have you been happy about as a Kings fan? And first 25 games of the season from like a team perspective. We'll talk about the players a little bit later, but from a team perspective, what do you like so far about this team?
Well, you just mentioned it. Drew Doughty being out, that was kind of a big question mark coming into the season once he went down in that preseason game against Vegas, is who was going to step up and how was it going to impact the defense, especially with them making that big change from the 1-3-1 to the 1-2-2. People were kind of expecting, oh, maybe the defense will have this drop off, and then you had Doughty go out. But nah, it's gotten even better. And I don't know where to point at which player is playing good. I know Mikey Anderson's been great, Gavrikov's been great, but you look up and down the lineup, and you were kind of expecting some holes on that end of the ice, but they've been excellent. So it's pretty much been the defense that's kind of carried them through this first part of the season. Like you said, they were only 2 points out of first place, and it's the shot suppression that's the big two words for me. I mean, right now they're on pace for a franchise best, allowing only 24.2 shots per game. That's first in the NHL. That's actually the lowest mark by any team since 2012, 2013, when the New Jersey Devils pulled that off. So, I mean, if you're not able to shoot the puck, which that's kind of how you score goals, then you're going to win some games if you're on the other side of that. So that's been a big positive from a Kings standpoint.
I'm pretty sure I can guess what you've not been happy about or impressed by so far. Certainly the power play has been an issue. Some have suggested that Drew Doughty comes back and the power play will get going. I don't know that the issue is who's running the power play necessarily, but certainly it can't hurt when he comes back. Is it just that easy that when Drew Doughty comes back, the power play is going to start clicking, or are there some other issues that need to be ironed out in your opinion?
I don't know. I mean, you watch the power play, and yeah, there's been some deployment question marks. I mean, the 5 forward thing that was the talk of the last few weeks or whatever. I liked it at first. I liked the ingenuity. I liked the kind of idea of it, and it's trying something new with all the struggles that were going on. But once it kind of wasn't going anywhere, I was like, okay, well, we got to get Brant Clark back up there, because Brant Clark has pretty much been one of the big surprises of the season so far. I don't know if anybody expected him to produce at the rate he had. They believe he had 11 points in the first 10 games at one point. So, yeah, I think if Drew Doughty comes back, he's certainly going to help. They have that chemistry. Here he has that chemistry with a lot of other PP1 players on that top unit. But I mean, for the time being, and we don't know what Drew Doughty's real return is going to be. I mean, I heard that he's not wearing the boot anymore. He might be skating soon, so we'll see what happens there. But for now, I think you just got to get Brant Clark back on the top unit. And I believe we saw that toward the end of the Ottawa Senators game, and it turned out to be one of the better power plays they've had and turned out to a goal. So, I mean, if anything, it gives Brant Clark a little bit of a, I guess, more confidence building, even though he doesn't really need it for the type of guy he is. And it also gives his teammates a little bit more acclimated to the player he is. I mean, we talk about it all the time with a player like Kevin Fiala, where he's got that high end IQ in terms of playmaking ability, no look passes, cross ice passes, sometimes when we don't need them. But I mean, he's still willing to make them. And I think Brant Clark kind of has that capability and that skill set. So that's a player that you are going to have to get used to as well if you're on the ice, not just being in the right place at the right time, but when to expect to pass. So I think if he had or if he had gotten a little bit more time with the top unit, we might have seen a little bit more production. I believe we saw that in the last game against Ottawa, and hopefully we see that continue until Doughty comes back.
Well, the Kings are riding a season-high 3-game winning streak. They haven't reeled off, obviously, many wins in a row, but the good news is they haven't lost a lot of games in a row either. It's been fairly consistent, I guess, in a way. And yet, if you're talking about having a good effort night in and night out, it hasn't been consistent. We've seen 2 losses to San Jose. Maybe the Sharks are a little bit better than we thought they were, but Chicago, Buffalo, there's been some head scratchers, and then some really good wins. Vegas, obviously Winnipeg recently was unbelievable. I would assume that you see this as well, and that, how are we going to get this team playing a little bit more consistent going forward here the rest of the season?
Yeah, the consistent inconsistencies is what we've been dealing with. I've called it a roller coaster throughout this entire year. I mean, when the highs are high, you had that those back-to-back wins in Nashville and Minnesota. Everybody was kind of thinking like, okay, like they're figuring it out, they're turning the page. And then you mentioned they've had those 2 losses in San Jose, where I feel like those 2 losses have felt like the lowest of lows in terms of this season. The first one, I was just so you felt angry almost. You're like, okay, like something's wrong with his team. You wanted to throw things, you wanted to break things, because it's like, man, like the Kings just aren't playing. They're not figuring it out. They're not playing that typical type of Kings hockey that they even want to play in terms of defensively. And they're also not scoring at the same time. And you had that second loss, that most recent loss where they lost 7-2. And that was just kind of, for me, I just felt like emotionless. Like, okay, well, it doesn't seem like we're going to go anywhere. It's like, you just think back to like, even if they make the playoffs, they're going to lose again. And then, like you said, they come back home, play the best team in the NHL, and I think everybody's confidence was probably at an all-time low, or at least mine was, coming into that game, thinking like, oh, they're going to get blown out. Gabe Villardi's going to come in, have a hat trick. Alex Iafallo is going to do something crazy and whatever. But that wasn't really the case. Of course, I mean, it's this typical Kings team, man. Like, just when you count them out, they can respond, and that's what we don't want to get to that point where they have to continuously respond, right? We want to see them continue to play that consistent style that's had them on this 3-game winning streak lately. But so yeah, I think if once that game ended, everybody was high and excited, but that excitement quickly lowered a little bit, because you're like, okay, well, we've seen this story before. Like, you have that next game on Friday in Anaheim, and if they don't win that game, then everybody's going to be thinking the same thing, like consistent inconsistencies. Like, here we go again. But sure enough, it was the guy by the name of Eric Portillo kind of carried them to that victory. So good debut for him, and a nice little 3-game win streak for the Kings.
I think Jim Hiller's done a pretty good job in his first year as a full-time NHL head coach. Certainly isn't afraid to try different things, as you talked about, the 5 forwards and the power play. Certainly likes to mix up the lines a lot. We've seen, I think, 9 different wingers with Kopitar and Kempe on the top line. He's used about everyone he can, I think, at this point. But just your thoughts on some of the things you've seen from Jim Hiller this season.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of Jim Hiller. I mean, talk about like coming into your first real season as an NHL head coach. I mean, he was the interim coach last year, but now he's coming to his first new season. They're changing the systems like we just talked about. So that's a big change as a head coach, trying to implement a new system. Oh, and then you lose the number 1 guy who takes up the most ice time on the team through the first half of the year. That's a big ask for a first time NHL head coach. And I think he's done a great job. I mean, like you said, he's changing things up, especially when like fans or even people like myself are asking for changes. He's given them to, and we saw them really, I guess, be welcomed with a win, or kind of get you some productivity in terms of those changes with the game in Winnipeg, where he just overhauled everything. We saw new line combos on all four lines, and it worked out. And it seems like it's kind of working out. We got the line with Deneau, Fiala, Laferriere. They've been playing pretty well. Kopitar and Kempe haven't really missed a beat. So it seems like anybody you can spot up there is gonna kind of produce. And then on the back end too, I mean, he was really quick to put Vladislav Gavrikov on the top unit with Mikey Anderson, but a move that no one really expected was kind of work, especially with this Kings organization who has always been kind of skeptical in terms of switching defensemen to their offhand side. And they've been one of the best defensive pairings in the league in terms of some of the metrics and analytics. So that's really worked out. So I mean, you have to give Jim Killer a lot of the credit for kind of carrying this team through what's been a really hard, I guess, first half of the season with Drew Doughty being out and a lot of the other changes that the team has made.
Up next, we're going to get into some of those Kings individual players, talk about their season so far. That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Just go to the PrizePicks app and you could be a winner. And you can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with little as 4 correct picks. Those are picks that you can make, again, more or less on stats, how many points a player will score, how many touchdowns a player will score. PrizePicks is the best way to get in on the action in most states, includes California. Download the PrizePick app today and use the code LOCKEDONNHL, and you will get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's the code LOCKEDONNHL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even have to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, we would continue with Russell Morgan from Hockey Royalty. Check out his work and all the guys over at hockeyroyalty.com. And let's talk goaltending, Russell. Darcy Kemper is still out, but apparently back skating. I know you get out to practice a lot. I don't believe he's back practicing with the team yet. But David Riddick has been great filling in for him. Had the game against San Jose, but other than that has been fantastic, especially on home ice. And I'm wondering if perhaps Jim Hiller might want to consider playing David Riddick a little bit more, even when Darcy Kemper returns, maybe even on home ice, get him some more time because he looks like a Vezina winner when he's playing at Crypto.com Arena. But what do you think about the goaltending, and what do you think about David Riddick so far filling in for Darcy Kemper?
Yeah, he's done a great job. I mean, you can't really ask for more in terms of the production that he's been giving you, even though he's had those few bad games, or I guess that just really that one bad game. I feel like that comes to mind in San Jose. But besides that, I mean, if you're asking David Riddick to be your starting goaltender, you're probably going to have some concerns. But he's done a great job in the absence of Darcy Kemper. You'd like to get Darcy back because, as well as Eric Portillo played in his debut, I think it'd be asking a lot for him to kind of carry the load in terms of being a backup goalie. I feel like it'd be better suited off starting a little bit more, especially with the Ontario rain. But so at least once Darcy comes back. So I think, but like you said, like with the way that David Riddick's been playing, I think now you're looking for a little bit more of a split once Darcy is back and healthy. I'm not sure when he'll be skating with the team. Probably soon. I didn't think it was that going to be that long that he'd been out. So maybe we see him. I mean, I know the Kings only played 2 games this week. Maybe we see him play, whether it be Wednesday at home against Dallas or Saturday at home, Minnesota. But nice little lull here for him to maybe get acclimated back and get healthy again. But yeah, I mean, David Riddick's done a great job, and hopefully you can kind of continue this production throughout the year.
You mentioned Eric Portillo. Has he been called up because I know Phoenix Copley, I think he just got AHL goalie of the week or something like that. And we saw what he could do when he had to fill in with the Kings. Is it Portillo because he doesn't have to clear waivers? Is that why they've called him up and not Phoenix Copley?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm actually not even sure. I feel like it was really a performance thing. Like they really wanted to see Eric Portillo come in and see get him in NHL playing time. And I think maybe that came to it had a little bit when they called him up, I believe a week earlier, just to practice with the team. Like he didn't even get a game, and then he sent him back down. And then he came right back up. But yeah, I think they were really kind of looking at to see, okay, well, we got a chance here to give Portillo a game. They really I feel like they waited until the game in Anaheim as like, okay, like this is going to be the game on the schedule that we'll get him in. So, I mean, it's not. I don't feel like it's a big surprise that Portillo got a game, maybe even this early. To be honest with you, I was kind of hoping we'd see Portillo. I don't know if Kemper and Riddick would be the goalies that could carry you throughout an entire season. You're probably going to end up needing a third one at some point, and everybody kind of expects it to be Portillo, even with Phoenix Copley being there. I think Portillo has bided his way, has done his time down in the AHL, and he's been productive down there. So for him to come up and get that first game and get the win at it and kind of show a little bit of confidence. I feel like he started off kind of nervy, but then got his feet settled underneath him, and then made some big saves to carry him to that win. And Anaheim put the puck on him quite a bit. I mean, I believe it was 28 saves with a 1.72 goals saved above expected. So great performance from him. I don't know how many more games we'll get from him going forward with Kemper coming back soon, but I'm looking forward to a cool or a nice future for Portillo here with Kings.
Well, this is my third season doing the show, and when I first took over, the future in net was very murky for the LA Kings. Now we've got Eric Portillo, and I just saw on Monday that Kings goalie prospects Carter George and Hampus Lukinski both have made the camp rosters for Team Canada and Team USA for the World Juniors. George for Canada, Lukinski for the US. The future in net might be kind of bright for the LA Kings right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not too informed on Slukinski. I haven't been following him too much now. I believe he's playing his first year in college.
Mhm.
Um, but with Carter George, like I'm very high on this kid. He's going to be something. I can just tell. I mean, the thing with goalies is like, yeah, okay, some are going to be technically sound, some are going to be athletic, like blah 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 blah. But I feel like a lot of it with goaltending has to do with like up here, that you're in your head. Like if you gotta have a confident goaltender that can kind of bounce back whenever things aren't going well, or can kind of stand tall in the big moments, then you're going to get some good production out of the goaltending position. And I feel like Carter George has all of that. Like he's got that kind of Jonathan Quick type of like instincts where he's not shy of the big moment. And we've seen that already at times in the OHL. I mean, he just scored a goal just not too long ago in the OHL. So yeah, I'm excited. I don't know whether I don't believe he's projected to be the starter for Team Canada, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being the starter. I know he shined for them in the U18s, where I read a couple of scouting reports talking about how he pretty much carried them and to some victories in that tournament. So yeah, like if that continues to be the case, like we've seen at the U18s and now in the OHL with Owen Sound, I believe, I wouldn't be surprised if he's the number one goalie coming out of this selection camp for Canada.
Keeping the theme of younger players, we just saw Ottawa in town. Tim Stützle, of course, has turned into a very solid NHL player. Quentin Byfield still looking to become that, taking one pick ahead of Stützle, of course. I love Q's energy. I love his attitude. I love his work ethic, but the production just isn't there. 3 points and, 3 goals and 11 points. If the production continues to kind of go along this timeline, do you think the Kings continue to stick with him at center, or at some point do they say, well, we know his future is supposedly there, but for now, we may have to put him back on the wing to try and get more out of him?
Oof. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough for me because I've been the big proponent of like, okay, we got to keep Quentin Byfield at center. Like he's the next guy once Kopitar eventually retires, whenever that is. I mean, it seems like
Mhm.
he's not missing a beat, but
No, for
yeah,
sure.
with Byfield, he was drafted to be the next center, the next franchise center, and hopefully even coming into this season, everybody projected him to be there, and it just hasn't worked out. And I don't even know if it is the center position because even at times on the wing, I believe when he played with Kopitar and Kempe for a few games, he still didn't look like himself, which is just it's so incredibly disappointing, Eddie. Like I'm telling you, like when I saw this kid play or when I saw him in training camp, I was expecting a different Quentin Byfield this season. He finished last year. He had a quote unquote breakthrough season last year, even though it was a little slow toward the end of the year. But then he got his contract over the year, getting paid $6 million per year. So he's got his money. And then that training camp that he had in the preseason where he had a hat trick in Quebec playing against Boston, like everything was going right. He was flying with Kevin Fiala and Warren Fogle. We thought that was going to be a great line. Sure enough, it just hasn't turned out to be. And yeah, it's all been because of Quentin Byfield. And if I have to look at, or if I look up and down the roster for the Kings, he's the number one person who's disappointed me the most so far this year. I mean, yeah, I said at the beginning of the year, like, this team was going to go as far as Quentin Byfield goes, and he hasn't really gone anywhere. And luckily for us, it's been Anze Kopitar that's kind of carried this team in lieu of that. But eventually, Quentin's going to have to step up, and there's really no more excuses for him. You've had the time now. I think he's over 100 games played in the NHL, so even more than that. I might be even shortchanging him a little bit, but yeah, he's had the time. He just needs to find the confidence. And I remember asking Jim Hiller about this a couple weeks ago, and he talked about how he needs to get his mojo, or he needs to get his swagger back. And we haven't really seen that swagger from Q. We haven't seen those type of dangles, even though they haven't really been maybe executed. And we haven't seen that willingness to drive to the net. And I think that's what's disappointing me the most. For every nickel I see him carry the puck, or every time I see him carry the puck up and stop in the offensive zone and the faceoff circle, be a rich man. Like, it's crazy. Like, it just happens far too often for a player of his size and his skating ability and his skill to not take the puck down to the net, or even at least go low and try to make a play from low to high. So he's just got too much that playmaker instinct, and we've seen him pass up way too many shooting opportunities too. So I think it's just more or less a confidence thing for him. If he can get his confidence back, and maybe we can see the Quentin Byfield we saw at times even last year.
Yeah, and I do agree with you. If he can somehow get it going and turn it to a productive player in the second half of the season, that could go a long way in the Kings obviously having some success later in the year and maybe in the playoffs. So if Q's been a disappointment, I got to imagine Alex Laferriere has been a pretty big, pleasant surprise. 11 goals and 20 points. He's 1 goal away and 3 points away from matching his totals from his rookie season. He's been unbelievable. And the thing I love about it, Russell, is that he's been moved up and down the lineup, and he doesn't seem to care. He's like, I don't care where you play me. I don't care who you play me with. I'm going to keep doing my thing. And it's been great.
Man, Jesse caught me off guard we were on the All the Kings Men podcast, and he asked me, he's like, is there anything, like, name one good thing that Alex Laferriere does? And I just couldn't name it. And that pretty much sums it up. He just does everything so well. And we were talking to Jim Fox one day, right after I think we talked to Alex, and he just turned around after we got done talking with him. He said, he just looks like a hockey player. And that's pretty much what Alex Laferriere is. He doesn't really have an elite shot. He's not this like smooth elite playmaker, like maybe like a Brant Clark, Kevin Fiala. He's not this big hitter or whatever. He's not this dangler. He just does everything so well. I mean, you just look at all of his goals so far that he's scored this year. It's all because he knows where to go on the ice. He knows where to be to receive a pass, whether it be a pass from Kopitar on the power play across the crease, whether it be deflecting goals in front, or even just following up on plays that are broken in the slot, like the goal he had against Ottawa. Like, I knew he'd be a good player. I didn't expect it to happen this soon, to be honest with you. Like, he's still a young guy. I believe he's only 21, even just maybe 22. So there's still a lot of growth, and it's still a lot of opportunity for him to build off of what it's been a real solid first, I don't want to say not first year, but second year now. And really the first year, I feel like that now we're seeing a comfortable Alex Laferriere coming off a first NHL season. And now he knows what to expect coming in each game, and the confidence is only growing with him. It's going to be a great player for the Kings in the future.
All right, we're going to look down the road a bit for the rest of the season with the LA Kings. We'll do that here with Russell Morgan. That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, get ready to tackle the NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook gives you everything that you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place with the app. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com/podcast, FanDuel.com. That's where you need to go. You will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I do more than one podcast, Russell, and sometimes I forget which podcast I'm doing. So I apologize to the fine folks at FanDuel. We're wrapping it up with Russell Morgan. He is on X, Twitter, at NHL Russell. And I'm sure you've heard this before. They always bring it up right around Thanksgiving time. If you're in a playoff position, about 80% of the time, you will make the playoffs. Last year, 13 of the teams that were in a playoff spot at Thanksgiving made the playoffs. So that's like 81%. So Kings are in a playoff spot. They've been there for most of the season. I think we're feeling pretty good that this is a playoff team, but I mentioned it's a very competitive Pacific Division. I know the Oilers are kind of lurking there. We'll see Vancouver. Maybe they get Thatcher Demko back, but are you feeling confident at least that we're going to see playoff hockey for a 4th straight season?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with some of the defensive metrics I was talking about, shot suppression, expected goals against, I mean, they're the best in the league in terms of all those numbers. So that'll carry you to a playoff spot. Whatever happens in the playoffs, though, we'll see what happens when we get there. But yeah, I mean, but if you look at the standings, like you said, like the Pacific Division's no slouch at this point. I mean, Calgary's, they're winning games. Edmonton's doing what they always do. They're just suck at the beginning of the season, and they figure it out toward the end, or when they want to start trying, and then they end up being the 2 or 3 seed, and then they end up playing the Kings again. I feel like we'll get to that point in April again this year, unfortunately. But yeah, the rest of the other teams, I mean, San Jose's already beaten the Kings a couple times. They've looked really good. Celebrini looks amazing. The Ducks they're competitive. I still don't think they're a good team, but they're competitive. Same thing kind of with the Kraken. I feel like they're in the same boat. But you also still got Vancouver and Vegas, and they're not going to go anywhere. I know Mark Stone's skating with the team in Vegas. He started skating with them today, and he's been out for a little while, so they're getting a big piece back. So, I mean, it's going to be a slog to get to the end of the year, toward the end of the year to get in the playoffs. It's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy for the Kings, but I feel like defensively they got that side figured out, so that'll get you some games, especially against some bad teams. And I think that's why their records look so good against bad teams, because they got the good defense to kind of shut them down a little bit. It's offensively that against the good teams is that what worries me is, can they score goals against teams like Dallas, Colorado, Vegas, Vancouver, where the record hasn't really looked at that as good against those teams. So I'm excited for the week coming up. I feel like even though it's only 2 games, you got 2 big matchups at home against Dallas and Minnesota. So I feel like that'd be a good way to build off this 3-game win streak that they're on right now.
One final one for you, Russell, and looking way down the road. Vladislav Gavrikov has been great filling in for Drew Doughty. He's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. He certainly hasn't done anything to hurt himself in the negotiations. Are we looking at another Matt Roy situation here, or how do you think this plays out as we go along?
I don't think it's another Matt Roy situation, because with Gavrikov, you see a spot for him. With Matt Roy, nobody really saw a spot for him in the lineup if he did re-sign. He's a right-shot defenseman. So you obviously still had Drew Doughty, Brant Clark, and then Jordan Spence, even though he's kind of struggled a little bit, but I think he's coming on of late. But with Gavrikov, since him being a left shot, you only really had Mikey Anderson and Joel Edmondson now, I guess, for 3 more years. And then after that, it's Andreas Englund, Jacob Muvarara. I guess that's pretty much it. Kyle Burrows can play the left side, but I don't really want him playing the left side. So yeah, I could see the Kings definitely being interested in re-signing Gavrikov. And I think this year he's played great, and maybe turned me into being on that side of the fence saying like, okay, the Kings need to re-sign Gavrikov as opposed to letting him walk. You traded a 1st-round pick for him. He's been great, I feel like, in what you've expected and what you probably have asked for him since the trade. So yeah, I mean, if the price is right, I feel like they got a really good deal once they signed him only for the 2 years at close to $6 million. It's going to be expensive now with the salary cap going up, and I'm sure he knows it. And that's kind of the reason why he only signed that short-term deal. So he's going to be looking for a big money amount. And I hope it's not too big, but I hope the Kings can kind of negotiate a way into keeping him around for at least a few more years.
He is Russell Morgan. He is from Hockey Royalty, podcast host and content creator covering the LA Kings. Follow him on X and Twitter at NHL Russell, and check out hockeyroyalty.com. Always a pleasure, Russell. Appreciate your time. Thanks for this, and we'll see you out at crypto.com arena here in the near future.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Eddie. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you. Again, that was Russell Morgan, and we very much appreciate his time. Hope you enjoyed that. For you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on Wednesday, we will have a preview of that Kings-Stars matchup. Thursday, obviously, recap that game. And then on Friday, I have another Kings fan feedback show. If you want to get in on that or send me any feedback for any reason, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE And if you're watching on YouTube, we love your comments in the comment section as well. We also would like you to stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram. We're at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And as always, go Kings go.